So the first question, how was this idea born of the project? And also, do I really believe that human beings cooperate or are good? Or is it just a sort of consequence of social structures, as I think was the basicness of the question. Well, if I go a little bit back where the idea was born, I think it was also a sort of reaction to the idea of a bubble that we live in. I think pre-corona we were being made conscious that we live in a bubble, only see and hear like-minded people, like-minded opinions, even on Facebook or newspapers, and also the polarized society of America, where Trump, it's amazing he's gone, but amazing how he dominated the world. And I think due to corona, this idea that other people really are different than you grew even stronger, because my bubble was not only a metaphorical bubble, but it was just literally the walls of your house. And the only way you read or heard other people was mostly media. And media, of course, mostly talks about failures of human cooperation. That's luckily more, how do you say that, more an exception. So that's why newspapers report it. And more this idea grew that it's not because you only see like-minded people, maybe also people who are really different than you. Maybe sometimes even people who really vote differently than you. Maybe Trump supporters, all that. Maybe they are not so different than you. I'm not saying we shouldn't fear people like Trump or people like right-wing politicians, both in Italy but do we also need to fear the people who vote for them? Is it not a wrong focus to fear the wrong kind of people? And is it also not in that way some sort of distraction? And that was how this idea, I think, originated, because I sensed that I wanted to hear the other, or the people who's not like you, the people who you would not necessarily meet. I would wanted you to meet them while you were at home or something like that. And then you can say I even tried to grow my bubble by working from people from 4 different continents. And then maybe the critique can be, yeah, but that would also be like-minded theater, left-wing. But okay, but the bubble becomes bigger and bigger. So I believe it. I think it's a good pair of glasses to look at the world, and it's a point of view. But just as a negative point of view is also a clouded point of view. You look at the world with glasses and with a certain lens, and I wanted to have a sort of, what if we look through this lens? And I was also supported a little bit by the book Rutger Bregman. I think his translation in English is Humankind, and also together with Harari, the Israeli thinker. I felt that they supported a little bit this idea that we wanted to make this on. Question 2, during the creation process, did you discuss and work with several experts in several disciplines in order to find the right way to approach the visitor, and can you describe me this process? I do have to say with ONTROEREND GOED we have a long history of working on one-on-one theater or interactive theater in many different forms. One-on-one, 5-on-5, like in different settings, groups. It's like I always see theater as a possibility. For me, the theater is never the stage. It's always the room. And sometimes it's just the stage and the people in it and the visitors. But sometimes it's the room and it can be one visitor and one. So for me, that was never different. The only thing that was different now is in the beginning of the Corona crisis, I was like, okay, but theater is physical, in the same room. It's not, we'll wait until this is over. But then I was really disappointed in all the streamings I saw, because it felt like it didn't matter. I was watching it. Like it was theater, but it could have been a movie or a Netflix series. And then I thought maybe it's the strength of theater that it matters that you're on the other side, that it matters that you are there. So I didn't discuss and work with several experts. I do have to say the biggest issue for me that I felt was, how can I build this thing? Because I didn't want to do it on Zoom, because Zoom was like, you can't, it's like making a show on Facebook. It's like, or making a website on Facebook, like it dominates too much how it looks. So I wanted to have built our own virtual theater. And that was really a nice way of people from Holland and National Theatre in London who brought me into contact with a French team who then worked on a New York platform connected to Snapchat. Like, it was a huge undertaking. It was really essential for this kind of, to make this happen, because I knew it depended on it. But yeah, I think it was mostly technically that we discussed with experts, but still the way of interacting was mostly built from our own experience. 3, what is the relationship between this project and the performing arts? Could you describe it as a digital performance? Yeah. Yeah, I like I said, I think for me, look, you can define theater as much as you want. I love it that the definition of theater can still evolve and change. For me, the idea is like, for theater is always the idea that it matters that you, the visitor, have some sort of communication back towards what's happening on stage. With movies and books, it's a one-sided conversation. You can't influence the work. And for me, it becomes theater when there's an influence from the other side, when there's a mutual conversation. And sometimes it can be a laugh in a stand-up comedian show, very small, or just your presence as an audience. But that's where theater starts, so this is no different for me. It's digital theater, you could say. How do you use the data collected during the interviews? Don't you think that interviewing a kind of audience already sensitive to culture could delimit the investigation on a smaller and not representative part of society? I don't collect the data, by the way. I think it's important to have that conversation. And I don't want to participate in the idea of websites or social big conglomerations collecting. Not that I can compete or not that it matters. It's too insignificant. But I like it just as in theater. It happened there and then it's gone. That's the beauty for me of theater. The idea that it disappears. It's a memory and it's never tangible anymore. Yes, there's a script. Maybe there's a picture, but the experience is gone. It's left. Maybe another way to define theater for me. And it's true that I mentioned the critique myself. Like, if you already meet people who are willing to see this kind of work and who are probably like-minded than you could say, yeah, it only defines the bubble even more. Okay, but there were people from Russia, there were people from Australia, there were people from Argentina, so even in that connection, it's bigger. And I think some of us, because I'm also making a show for people who need this kind of view, I'll say it this way. I made this show for left or right. If you're a Trump supporter, you could even also in the same way enjoy this performance. But of course, I'm trying, of course, to reach these kind of people. But it's difficult. But in the basic, I'm making a show for all people from all over the spectrum, you could say, and hopefully they will come. So, but I like I said, it's more of like, if you came, for instance, and came to see the show, it was for me important. What if you look at the world in a different way? It's an invitation to look at the world in a different way, to look at people around you in a different way. I don't know how much, for instance, in Italy, don't know politics enough in Italy, but how much do we fear the far right supporters and all that? And I'm not saying we shouldn't fear the politicians and all that, but like even there, how much is it important to view the exceptions or be afraid of the masses? How much does it influence, and how much does it, for instance, distracts us from real problems like inequality is a much huger problem that shouldn't be left or right. The climate change, like we are so busy with fearing other people sometimes that we are fearing the wrong kind of people, and people in power just love us to fear each other instead of them. But okay, that's a personal kind of reason to make this show, and hopefully, yeah, it's a tiny little chain in trying to change that worldview or the world. 5. Once you are aware of being part of the majority, what will you accept will happen in society that you wish in the manifesto? Is it just a way to be aware of this, or do you think it's necessary to create a stronger relationship between art and politics? I just see myself as a tiny chain in a world. Hopefully I can be that. Hopefully I can be one in your world, in anybody who comes. And for me, look, sometimes it's one of these books, sometimes it's maybe a meeting I had, a conversation with the people, but those little interactions or big interactions can have a small or a big impact. And that's where art is always political. Even if it doesn't want to be political, it's a political statement. But for me, art is always part of the real world. And sometimes it invites you to look at everything in a different way. And that's why I make this. And it was indeed, writing this manifesto was indeed the first time that I almost myself made this movement real. I was having a rehearsal at a certain point with all the actors. I was in a room with 11 actors from one performance, because there were 70 actors, but we divided it. And I was thinking, in the same way, we are really creating this movement. Like, you are recruiters. I am the CEO of this, or the originator or the creator of this group. So I loved it that the fiction and the reality like sometimes felt closely related. 6, are you working on other interaction digital projects? Will you continue on this way in the future? I don't know. I think I'm as much as everybody, I'm curious how the world will change on many different ways, or will it? After this corona crisis and after we come outside again, I think now people especially want to physical again. I think we want to feel each other again. We want to sweat in a dance temple, or be at a concert, or be in a pub and be in a theater and laugh with each other. So for me, I'm more working on a project now that celebrates being together in a space. But I don't think this will ever disappear. Just as, for instance, maybe it's a stupid thing, but just as, for instance, like takeaway dinners is going to be part of our life even more. I think this way in many different aspects. For instance, now the logic of not having to travel by plane, but being invited over Zoom for a class or for a conversation, the normality of that is something I really like also. So I hope these things will stay and change, and I'm curious how it will evolve, just as everybody. Have you been interviewed? Are you a good person or a bad one? A good one, just like you.